was just wonderful, and that team was great.
It's freeing, stressing about having to get the kids off the bus. For summer?
There's no particular protocol, it's wherever you like, if you want copies of the difference, and do that, and that's sometimes Jackie was just to get it on the computer. It's fine.
Yeah.
Okay. 7 o'clock. Stand for the pledge, please. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, every year, this time, we have to have a reorganizational meeting, and the board clerk, who is Maureen Jensen, will start the reorganization meeting. And the first item is to swear in the 3 new board members. So she's going to do one at a time, and I'm going to take your picture, and you will sign an oath of office.
Zachary. Stand. I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
of Brunswick Central School District
of Brunswick Central School District
Board Member.
Board.
Congratulations. Janine? I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of New York,
the Constitution of the State of New York,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
of Brunswick Central School District
of Brunswick Central School District
Board Member.
Board Member.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Your lie? I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the State of New York,
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
of Brunswick Central School
of
District
Brunswick Central School District
Board Member.
Board Member.
Still you.
At this time, we have to elect a president and a vice president. Do we have any ideas?
Nominate Ryan Goodenough for president.
Okay,
I'll second that.
okay. Okay, Ryan, please stand. I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
I will support the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the State of New York,
and the Constitution of the State of New York.
that I will faithfully discharge the duties of
I will faithfully discharge the duties of
Brunswick Central School District
Brunswick Central School District
Board President.
Board President.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, Vice President,
I mean,
I would like to nominate Tina.
I'll second that.
okay.
Your turn.
I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the State of New York,
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and I will faithfully discharge
and I will faithfully discharge
the duties of
the duties of
Brunswick Central School District
Brunswick Central School District
Board Vice President.
Board Vice President.
Congratulations.
Okay, so the meeting is now turned over to the new president.
So, yeah, scroll down a little bit. I don't remember how many things there are. So can I get a motion to put items 2.3 through 2.10 on the table? Dina, Jenna,
2-1 through 2-10.
well, we covered.
Oh, we
2,
do,
1,
I'm sorry,
2.
my apologies.
Oh, well, there's more. All right, so then let's revise that 2.3 through 2.16. Jenna, Danielle.
You do need to have some discussion to decide who is going to be on the board committees.
Oh, yeah.
Audit and finance. I think last year. Jenna.
Me and Val.
Last year
I'd like to
was
stay.
Jenna and Dina.
I would do.
I'd like to stay on.
All right, so Jenna and Danielle.
Mhm.
Facilities. I did, Kevin, you were on this.
I was on policy.
I'll do,
Last year was Tammy, Ryan, and Danielle.
I could do it. I think Tammy would do it too.
Tammy?
Yeah.
No, stay on.
Do you guys have recommendations for new board members?
Yeah, I mean, Here's
Or maybe talk a little bit about what each
Yeah,
one of
here's
the committees
the
are
thing,
and what they do.
audit and finance basically is all of us anyway, but sometimes we'll have a special session before a board meeting to look at budget, et cetera. So it's really, yes, we have official members on the committee, but we all,
We all pretty much.
Okay.
facilities, more involved with like the capital project and updates there, anything else going on with the buildings and grounds, feel free to add if I'm missing anything.
And so like capital project, if we're gonna be talking about, say with the turf going on, so there's meetings that are held maybe with architects or if, any major improvements or things going on in the building or if something's happening. And they'll be like, there's an audit or there's a facilities meeting.
Okay.
You necessarily don't have to come, or if you're on the committee, you can come and then we, are here to update. So
Okay.
so that way we're not all inundated with every meeting that's
Okay.
taking place. So
Okay. And then is there reports out that you do as a member of that subcommittee to the
Yes.
full committee?
Yeah, so every
Okay.
board meeting we do open up for any subcommittee updates.
Okay.
Policy committee is, I know Kevin, you served on it last year. Largely, it's policies brought to us by the School Board Association.
Yes, so the school district will recommend the mandatory ones from the state. A lot of them, we don't actually write the policies, they actually come to us from the state. If there's a policy we're looking for, we solicit them from, what is it? I can't think of what's the acronym.
NISBA.
NISBA, we get them from NISBA, we pay a subscription to NISBA. And they already, so that way we don't have to go through the attorneys, we don't have it, a lot of mistakes or,
Yeah.
it's an inclusive and thorough policy. So we actually review those first. We usually receive them as an email and then we decide, do we have any objections or any corrections or any issues with these? And then they're brought up, read, we don't read them. They're brought up at every meeting for a first reading and a second reading to review, and then they're voted on.
Every once in a blue moon, there's ones that are a little bit more involved, like academic eligibility policy.
Yes,
That was a local policy.
that is true.
Yeah, so for the most part, there are ones given to us, but there are some that we do have a heavier hand in writing. Yep.
And the cell phone thing that's gonna have to come out, is that gonna be something that you're gonna get from NISBA?
Nope, we actually did that locally. That was on I think it was last meeting?
Yes.
Yep.
It was on the last meeting,
Oh,
so
okay.
that's already been adopted.
Oh,
Yep,
Great.
but that would have been an example of we did that one locally.
Okay, thank you.
I would say if you like policy, that's a great one to sit in on, reviewing documents and Just making sure it
It
makes
requires
sense.
less meetings, so for me, it's very good.
Yeah, it's virtual for the most part.
Yes.
Kevin, do you want to resume?
I'd like to continue on that if possible.
Last year was Kevin and Leah. I don't know, 2 people.
Yeah, I would go on policy.
Thank you.
How many people serve on these?
2 to 3
committees? Just 2 to
usually,
3.
but I don't think there's a limit necessarily. But again, for the most part, especially with audit and finance, we all end up sitting in. Communications was a new committee we put on last year. Jenna and I served on it. Jenna, do you want to continue? Communications is kind of reviewing, how we're communicating to the public, what's on the website, trying to make improvements there. We know that communications is sometimes a sore spot, so trying to drive improvements.
Do you want to stay on that one?
No, I'd be happy to not.
Yeah.
Everybody should have at least one committee, though. I will say that. So
Yes.
however you work that out.
So Tammy and Jenna.
So of the board committees, we should be on one of those.
There's also the 2 district committees. Angeline, correct me if I'm wrong, but that would be the same group of trying to serve at least one of either the board committees or the district committees, or?
I would say yes, but these are the first 3 are the official ones. And I would recommend everybody having a spot on there. If there was 3 for each one, then all 9 people can have one. And a lot of times in the past, people have dipped their toe in 2. So
Could you read back who's on what now?
Yeah.
So, okay,
Okay, so audit and finance is gonna be Jenna and Danielle.
we could have one more
so
person.
I'll do that one.
You wanna do that too?
Yeah.
Zach and Dina?
Yeah, if I could be on there too, that'd be great.
Okay. Facilities, Tammy, Danielle, Ryan.
I will say there's going to be more meetings with the facilities due to the capital project, so just a little bit more of a time investment.
So do you want me to go on that one too,
It's
just so
really
that
a-
someone?
It's really up
Always there.
it's really up to you guys.
Okay, yeah.
Policy, I have Kevin and Janine.
So I'll jump on policy.
Communications, I have Jenna and Tammy. I would join that then.
And then for the district committees, as Ryan was alluding to, curriculum and assessment, we usually have 2 board members. Curriculum and assessment is the shared decision-making arm of our curriculum and assessment for the district. Meets usually 3 or 4 times a year, full-day meetings. Last year it was Dina and Ryan. And Dina, I believe you were able to participate remotely, so we do have some flexibility there. So.
Yeah.
Don't happen
I'll
often.
do that again.
Okay.
I'd love to be on that one.
And I would say if you can make it in person, it's a great, experience.
Ryan, do you want to do that again?
Yeah, I'll stay on that one.
So I have Dina, John, and Ryan for curriculum and assessment. Wellness was Jenna last year. I would love to be on wellness. I don't know what the wellness is, but maybe,
It needs a little zhuzh, so that'd be perfect for you,
okay,
just given your background.
okay. Jenna?
That's fine, I'll stay. Okay. And then the NISMA annual business meeting, this is, we get a vote at the table, as does every other member of NISBA. And Jack, I think you've done this you did it for like 13 years or something like that, so.
Wow, yeah.
I was going to nominate Jack. I can't do that.
I will say this, the conference is again in New York City this year, and that one is always really well received. So if you are interested in going to the annual meeting, let Maureen know sooner rather than later so she can register you and try to find you hotel rooms.
And I'm just gonna pipe in, I'd encourage everybody to go to it. It's not that expensive, there's a budget for it, and especially new members, you'll learn a lot. But I will say the
I can get them for you in just one second.
voting no longer takes place at the convention. They do it virtually, and it's terrible. No, because it's several hours in front of your computer. Whereas when they did it at the meeting, it was much more interactive.
So with Jack doing that great sales job, I'm happy to continue the tradition of the president doing it, but if someone's actively interested in doing it, I won't. Okay,
Ryan, if you want to do it, I'll be the alternate.
perfect. All right.
And then the board representatives, again, this isn't an official capacity, but as you know, even just this year in our work with the PTSA, that liaison is critically important, having that representation there. So I might even suggest 1 or 2, so that way if somebody's unavailable to be at a particular meeting, I might recommend that.
2, please. Yeah, I mean, if you have kids, especially in elementary, that'd be great.
Last year was just Ryan. Do you want to do it again?
I mean, I'll do it again, but I would love someone else to help. Thanks, Zach.
The legislative liaison, that's if there's opportunities to do any kind of lobbying, meeting with public officials. The Brittenkill Education Foundation, we're still working on getting that up and going again. CAPSPA is something that was very locally pretty active. In the last couple of years, it hasn't been super duper active, but I thought we would add that on there should something come up with that. And again, that's just something similar to NISBA, but just on a local level. And then the athletic committee liaison, that would be if we had to make some major decision. We had to streamline programs, teams, something very major. If there was an issue to solve, we would get the ad hoc committee together and they would report back to the entire board.
So the legislative liaison last year was Jack.
I can do the legislative liaison.
Okay. CAPSPA was Leah.
So do you have any other information on CAPSPA?
Honestly, Leah was the one that really, and I think she's watching online now. She was the one that saw anything. I can try to see if there's anything going on there. If you want to leave it blank and if it comes up, we can attend to it
I
then.
can do it, I'll talk to you.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
Thanks for the cookies, Leah.
Athletic committee liaison was Tammy and Val.
I'll do it again.
Anybody else for athletics?
I would join athletics.
If you're involved in the Booster Club meetings too, I know a lot of the times Tammy would bring back kind of information that the Booster Club wanted to share with the board too. So I don't know how much you're involved with the Booster Club at all, but that was always helpful too for that.
Okay, perfect.
So
For the educational foundation, in the hopes that we actually get it rolling, anyone want to serve as our board member for that?
It's a very low lift once we get it back up and working again. So if anybody
Is there, what's the mission behind this?
So it was kind of like a fundraising arm for the school in the past. You'll see signage like outside the auditorium that talks a little bit about it. So and I think there's a bit of a
Process.
reserve
Yep.
that's still there. So we're trying to find ways of kind of bringing it back together and using it to help fund things that the district can't fund otherwise.
So it would serve things that aren't easily funded by the district, special projects like Odyssey the Mind back when they were going to the world.
Yeah.
Buying, I think, steel drums. One year it wasn't in the music budget and they had a special plan for it. So special projects, teachers would go and make a plea, people would donate to it.
Oh.
Yep, it was neat.
I think there's
That
like,
sounds important.
what, 30, 40,000 still in the,
That
a
I'm
little
not
bit
sure
less,
about. I can't recall.
whatever the number is. Does anyone want to try to help jumpstart that?
We can put another date.
Okay.
So educational foundation will.
TBD. The other appointments, anything different there. These are all the same as they've been before. Miscellaneous rates, as I mentioned in the news and notes, the IRS rate went up, so that's now 70 cents per mile. We made a couple small adjustments to rates to be compliant with the new minimum wage. And then this is just important, and I had sent that to you in an email, just the reaffirmation of the Board of Ethics, or the policy about our ethics, so I had sent that to you. It's just acknowledging the fact that you read our policy and you're aware of the particulars.
Angelina, on the substitute rates, was that the one that we had to update mid-year last year?
We did update that.
Our numbers are in line with the market?
Yes and no. I think the subs that come to us are very dedicated and loyal to us. Are we paying the most in the area? Definitely not. There are some districts that pay I think like $300 a day for a certified substitute, a retiree substitute. So it ranges widely. I mean, I think the more we pay, I'm not certain if we raised it right now that we would get a flood of other.
Yeah,
people coming in. I think is the best way I want to answer that.
I used to get $85 a day when I came out of college. So it's grown quite a bit, hasn't it?
It's really hard to come by people, and I'm looking at Kelly because every day when our loyal people come in, we're like, because they could go to a lot of different places and they choose to come here every day, which is great. And then the last one is required review of annual policies, and I had shared those with you too in news and notes as well.
All right, so do we need a motion to approve items 2, 3 through 216? Dina, Tammy, all in favor? All right, approved. All right, motion to put the minutes, 3.1 on the table. Tammy, Danielle, any discussion? Nope. All right. All right, motion to put items 4.1 through 4.3 on the table. Dina, Kevin, see, I'm looking around this time.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
If I could,
Yes.
just mention, 4.2 is the list of the meeting dates that I had shared via email. If any of these are problematic, we can change them. That's not a problem. But if we adopt them tonight, I will publish them and put them on the board calendar. We did have to move the May meeting just so it's as early as possible so that we can get the mailers out in time because mail is an issue. I also did want to ask the board, we've had it at 7 o'clock. Do you want to keep it at 7? You want to go to 6? Do you want to keep, what do you want?
7.
Yeah, let's leave it as is unless there's,
Is there any way May 7th can be moved to May 5th so that we're not going into the weekend trying to get the mailers out? Are there restrictions on Tuesday meetings?
Can you, I think it's the earliest we can do. Stephanie's going to look
We can do the 5th. We can do Tuesday.
We can do,
Because if we can, that would be my suggestion.
May 5th. Let me just double check, make sure it's
It's
not.
not a mile. We'll have tacos.
you're volunteering to bring tacos? Got it?
Yeah.
That's okay with me.
Tacos for the 5th?
So if I'm hearing that correctly,
They're gonna be.
there's a request to move the May 7th meeting to Tuesday, May 5th.
Yes, please.
Yep.
I think so.
Okay. So you just, it will accept that with that change.
So I think any other items needing discussion? All right,
I will say you guys are going to love Alina. Alina is an absolute sweetheart. She's such a nice young lady. I think you're going to adore her.
all in favor of items 4.1 through 4.3 with the update to the date of May 7th to May 5th? All right, approved. Motion to bring item 6.1 to the table?
I skipped ahead. You want to do my update?
Oh, sorry, I didn't see that.
I skipped it.
All right. Angelina, do you want
Sure.
to give your update?
Good evening, everyone. I just want to say from my perspective, I think the end of the year was absolutely fantastic. The celebrations. Is that what you're?
Yeah, your microphone.
Okay. The end of the year celebrations were great. I know some of you had attended some of them as parents, and I hope you had that same experience as well. I don't know if anybody wants to see any of the end of the year celebrations.
Perfect. Our kids had a lot of fun, especially in the senior class, I think.
Yes.
They, very memorable.
I thought it was a great, I'm sorry.
So go ahead.
I thought it was a great high school graduation for the first time having inside. I thought everything went great. I liked the cadence of everything. The kids had more time in the spotlight. I thought it was a good ceremony.
I will say this, the senior class was a really good group of kids, which made doing all those things really great. They got some freedoms that the previous classes didn't have, and they did not abuse them. And it was a really nice celebration. Sad to see them go for sure.
But even 8th grade, 5th grade, kindergarten, they were all very lovely celebrations, which was absolutely fantastic. To give you an update on hiring, we had to reopen the Director of Special Education. Unfortunately, the person who we offered the position to wasn't able to take it, but we've opened it back up and we actually have some pretty decent candidates. When it closes, we'll get the committee back together and we'll go through that process. I really do hope to have somebody in place for September. I think that would be what's best. And we're kind of piecing it together this summer, working that through. But the committee will get back together. I know Mr. Furley was part of that committee, so he got that message at the end of the year. So we'll get there. On another note, we do have to hire a full-time and a part-time special education teacher for the elementary school. That is due to a retirement and a transfer over to the secondary school. I'm not super worried about the full-time position. That was, Kelly and I looked at the applicants today. I think there's some decent graduates out there and definitely people have interest. I am a little worried about the part-time position, and that's a weird spot in the middle of the day to service a handful of kids. And last year we advertised for it multiple times and we weren't able to find anybody. So that's just something that's on my radar. And the easy thing to do would be to just make it full-time, and you can easily get more candidates, but again, with tough budget times, just makes it a little bit more challenging. On a really, really positive note, we found an experienced earth science teacher that picked us over a bunch of other districts that they interviewed for. So his name is Ben Wally. He will be on the next board agenda. I actually have a signed contract today and he'll be at the board meeting. So he's transferring in from Central New York. He's relocating his family here and we're really excited. I think that's going to be absolutely fantastic. I was super worried about that one, but that's really, really terrific. And lastly, I know I mentioned this before, and I'm looking at Mrs. Honorado, so chirp in at any point. Kelly had brought to me a concern that many of the professionals that were doing kindergarten screening came to us with about the skills and the lack of skills that some of the incoming kindergartners have. And what we think, Kelly and I are planning for the worst. And what I mean by the worst, meaning the most need for services. Many of the kids maybe should have been in CPSE, but weren't. And the first time that anybody's laying eyes on them is at that kindergarten screening. But the reason why I share this is because if a child is identified, there can't be more than 50% of the students in a particular class, a co-taught class, which is our model.
Any class.
Yep,
Any class, right,
yeah. And we think with the numbers of the incoming kindergartners that the kindergarten class will likely have an imbalance. So we're actively kind of working through that. So unfortunately, we might have to hire someone that we haven't budgeted for, but this comes up year to year, but I don't think this problem is gonna go away.
An imbalance of what? Of children who need additional services
So-
or special ed services?
I'll let Kelly speak to it.
Yeah,
That's
so
okay.
in any class, any classroom, any grade level, in any school, you can't have more than 50% of that class roster as students with IEPs, with disabilities, but disabilities with IEPs. Because if you are doing that, you know, the state, and this I think is even up to the federal level, kind of use that as you're creating a de facto special class.
Sure.
So if your numbers of students who need special education, and sometimes we look at those students with the information we have about them so far, really strongly suspect that they may or will be identified as students with disabilities, you know, we try to make sure that we're not overloading a class with students that have disabilities or that we heavily suspect may have a disability.
So it's more based off of our assessment off of the information we have. It's not like all of these kids coming in already have an identified
Some do.
disability.
Some
Right.
of them
So
do.
we're anticipating more than 50% of the kindergarten class as a whole.
No, just it would be like 50% of one classroom.
But we can't spread them out in a
We
way.
will have to, yeah, and I'm already kind of.
I know what you're trying to say. So we, in our model, we have 5 kindergartners, 5 kindergarten classes. One of them has a special ed teacher that's assigned to it.
Got it.
In that particular class, if, let's say there's 20 kids, we can't have 10 or more that are identified with an IEP.
And so it's not like, oh, we can put 4 here, 4 here, 4 here, because we don't have a special education teacher
Correct,
for all those classes.
That's correct.
And
Okay.
I wanna say too, just, you know, from a policy standpoint too, we don't
it's never really our practice to put all students with IEPs in one, even if it's below 50%. We look to distribute that, and have a natural representation as much as we reasonably can. Some students who have IEPs, they might not need a direct service from a special education teacher. So that child could be in a different class. Even with that practice, we're still anticipating a much higher number of kindergartners with disabilities who will need direct service from a special education teacher. And that's where you have to kind of look at efficiency too, and making sure we can schedule services for those kids to be compliant with their IEPs, but also not put them all in one classroom if that's going to put that class total above 50% of students with disabilities.
And we can't predetermine, but trusting the professionals that have been doing this a really long time, they have a great suspicion of somebody that's gonna fall into that bucket. The last thing we wanna do is to have a student and move them from one class to another.
And we've done that before, and sometimes it works very well if we can be strategic about how that transition works. But yeah, most of the time, if we really, really are anticipating, like for example, there are some students who have already been referred and they're waiting for evaluations, but because of preschool provider shortages and scheduling through the preschool evaluation system, they just haven't had their evaluations yet. So we've already, said we suspect, right, that this child may have a disability. So we're kind of trying to plan accordingly for some of those kids.
So I was just gonna ask that, like, at what point during the school year would these kids be identified as a kid with an IEP and needing to be in a specific classroom?
Some of them we hope as soon as possible in the fall, and we're kind of trying to get things lined up for that. Some of them, they came in from like screening kind of identified a potential need. Screening doesn't identify whether or not a student has a disability, but the screening can give us a lot of information. However, those might be students where we really need to give them some time to acclimate to a structured educational environment, see if they respond to some interventions, and kind of, if they do have a disability, it's a big if. We might not be finding that out until a little later on, which is okay because they're still getting some help along the way. But even, those children aside, there are already a large number that were identified as preschoolers coming in with IEPs, are waiting for evaluations, and we just have to kind of distribute them the way we ethically need to.
What is your prediction for need? Would it be one additional teacher, or I forget, I'm sure, but just curious what.
I think it's gonna be one. That's what Kelly and I are kind of planning for right now. It's tough. You're totally guessing. You're really guessing, but just the people that were doing the screening came to me immediately and said, Angelina, I have never in all my years seen a screening with some of the needs that this particular group has, which is the COVID group. They were born during 2020, so some exposure to things might not be there. And they might not need special education for life. This might be something that they get some speech and language and they were able to work on those communication skills. And the goal would always be to have them in the least restrictive environment. Hopefully early intervention works. So that's the hope. So because that has budget implications, I did want to share that.
So this is kind of a crucial year to see if this is a trend or if this is just COVID.
Yeah.
What to say? Even outside of really suspecting whether or not there's an underlying disability, the observations over my years here as principal and assistant principal, and this comes from my colleagues too, from faculty and staff, the 4-year-olds and 5-year-olds that are coming in as a whole don't have the same skills that we saw maybe 8 years ago for 4 and 5-year-olds coming in. Yeah, I think they're just, they're exposed to different things and not exposed to other things that kids maybe a decade ago were, and it is kind of impacting their development. It doesn't mean they have a disability, but it does mean that some of that traditional kindergarten readiness or pre-K readiness that we looked at before is, we kind of have to rethink that. We don't have the answers for that yet, but those are the trends that we're observing.
Kelly and I had an opportunity today to talk about goals for next year, and one of the things that she is going to be working very diligently on is some parent universities for incoming parents, like going through what are the skills that your kids should have and things really concrete so they know even what to work on. Something as simple as using scissors. That is a long lost skill. Kids can pick them up. What is this? Now they can use a tablet. They can use those things very, very well, actually. But some of the things that might have been given in the past are definitely not given.
I was gonna ask that if there was any kind of like resource we could direct when they come in for their screening or when they enroll their student, like, great, you've enrolled them, their screening is gonna be at this time. Here's some resources on some things you should be working on with your child.
Yeah, I'm fairly confident they give that out. I'm hoping that we can get to the parents when the kids are 3, as opposed to that kindergarten
waiting time,
screening.
yeah.
Yeah, like, here's some of those things. Like, I think we're to the point where you don't know what you don't know, kind of thing, if that makes any sense.
One of the things I hope to add in, which is kind of a long-standing tradition in the school district for kindergarten, is we do kindergarten parent information night in March. I'd like to start a pre-K parent information night around that same time of year, because that might help put it on the radar that we have a UPK program, that you should be starting to register your child around that time. And also, if a parent is on the fence and, oh, well, should I send they're just a baby, should I do this? That might just help inform their decision and give them some tools to start maybe, hey, give them a pair of child scissors at home. They're not too young. It's safe to do that. Let them pick up a crayon or a marker and color for a while, as opposed to, spending the same amount of time on a screen. Information on what's developmentally appropriate, but also what pre-K is all about. That's my hope for this year.
And is that 50% through every grade level?
Yes.
It is.
Yep, so if, for example, we had a 9th grade English class, Mr. So-and-so's, if more than 50% of that particular section, and that's sometimes what makes scheduling very hard, because there's only a limited number of special educators to actually push into those
Must
classes.
become more of a challenge over here.
Yeah, in some grades, we have some quirky things, I think, for those of you that have been on the board for a little while that look at the enrollment trends. You've got a cohort of 59, and then the next year the cohort is 90-something.
Yeah.
So the way you program for the 59 cohort is very different than the 89, that's a whole other section. So it's some kind of wonky stuff over in the elementary school. Is the cohort in 5th grade now?
They're
This is
going on
91?
to 6th,
Yep,
right?
91. So they're heading to 5th grade. So you may remember we had 4 and 5 sections everywhere, but through budget, we went down. That small cohort only has 3 sections. And that there's been 3 that has followed those groups, and right now they're in.
I think that class going in the 6th grade was like enormous, like the high 90s.
Yep.
Our incoming 4th graders are even bigger than that group. Yeah, they're our biggest cohort, I think. They're in the mid to upper 90s.
So it's just a little bit of an anomaly. Thank you for adding that.
Yes.
That's an important piece.
Angelina, I know you serve are invited to, various state meetings and stuff. Is that something that we can kind of start sharing at those venues? Because I'm curious how much we're seeing this across the state, and seems like an area where long-term we may need more funding, if this is.
No, I think that makes sense. I know it's been talked about in a way of figuring out how to get special educators certified. So Mr. Ferlito over there has the traditional, when we went to school, a K-12 certification, and the state started to really narrow these bands for the teachers to teach. So if you hired somebody and they were K-6, then I can't use them at the secondary school. So they started opening it back up to try to figure out, because there's so many schools that are deficient in multiple special educators, and that's something that's not good for kids. We're short of a part-time one, and that's not great. Even though we were actively recruiting, there's not a lot out there. There's not a lot to pull from, unfortunately.
Does the number of IEP students affect our state calculations for funding?
I'm gonna look to Stephanie really quick on this. Yes and no. So Stephanie works with the director of special education to do high cost aid, and there's certain kids or programs that get aided at a higher level. So for example, we have a child that's residential, that gets a different level of state funding than someone that maybe only gets speech and language. But I think if I'm saying this correct, right from the state, it's not.
No, so certain kids will reach a threshold to do the threshold, like for the in-house ones. So like a kid who gets like an aid, a one-to-one aid, they get speech, maybe psychology services, those ones might reach our threshold that we'll get aid on. But the majority of our in-house students we do not get
Thank you.
that excess cost paid.
That's a good point though, because the needs are there.
Yeah, and they're only gonna get worse.
Yeah.
For the kids who go outside or need it.
I think our rate right now is 13 or 14%. And I think that's a statewide average is like 14 or 15%.
It was like 19.
The state average was?
Yeah, I don't know what it is
Yeah,
right
I
now, but
could
it was
be-
a lot higher.
I
than it
could
used
be
to be.
wrong
It-
on that.
I'm not saying it should be 19, but
But we have to report that to the state too. They want to make sure that you're not under-reporting or over-reporting special education students for the purposes of playing around. And that's a pretty prescriptive process that we go through. So does anybody have any other questions on hiring?
Okay, can I just, how many, do we have 2 pre-K classes?
Three.
We have 3.
And they are full, I have that on there too. They are fully subscribed right now.
15 seats a class, so 45 total spots.
And how many did we have last year? 3?
Yep, 3,
Same.
45 kids, yeah.
How many are waitlist right now?
I don't think there's very many, but ask me that in about 3 weeks and there'll be a handful of people. Because once it hits August and people start seeing Target having specs closed out, oh my goodness, I forgot about that. So I know there's a very, very tiny wait list right there where people have inquired, but all 45 seats are filled. So what we do, because we've selected everybody on the wait list, we now just go in order. So if you asked us in July, you're gonna get preference over you asking in August.
And Janine, you may be thinking of like, we did look at potentially cutting one of those pre-K classrooms with this year's budget or next year's budget, but we had some fortuitous additional money from the state and a retirement that allowed us to keep that program.
Okay, yeah, no,
High
I'm just
priority.
thinking about the issue that you just brought up of all of these kindergartners being behind.
And I would say the same is true for pre-K, but we talked about some data, I don't know if it was last year or the year before, but that the kindergarten screening performance, the percentile ranks for kids that went through our pre-K versus the kids that went through our pre-K program definitely performed at a better rate on the kindergarten screenings than kids that didn't. So it does, that kind of helped us realize it really does make a difference to go to our UPK program.
I don't know that there's a lot of accessible pre-Ks other than ours in the area. So I don't know if that's part of the issue for our families that don't get into our program.
How many kindergarten classes?
5 sections.
Because we try to
roughly
keep
about
our
60%
kindergarten numbers as lower as we can, like more in line with our pre-K. We do have, there's not a lot of kids enrolled as compared to last year, but we always get summer sunrises, yeah. We've got about 65, I think, right now.
I'm gonna anticipate, I would guess that we should end up somewhere between 80 and 85. That'd be my guess. But it's hard, COVID just impacted, so it's really hard to tell with housing, things like that, so it's hard to say. Any other questions on that? Okay, I have some positive news from the transportation department. We got our annual review. It is 92% of passing, which is absolutely fantastic. And I mentioned that it's particularly great because 2 of the new buses that we bought last year, with last year's funds, have still not come in yet. And it has to do with supply chain and that kind of thing. So I only mention that because that means 2 of our most elderly buses are still in rotation and they shouldn't have been in rotation. But we can't cycle them out. We just got word, Stephanie and I did today, maybe one's coming in July.
We did get one of last year's buses, we're waiting on one.
Okay. And it definitely played into that a little bit. So that's fantastic. Construction project, I think you saw the community update that went out, and there'll be some more community updates. I just wanted to give you some more information about the status of the project. The roofing at the elementary school, you can see there's tape and the materials are all out front. The roofers will actually be here probably at midnight on Monday morning. They'll start and they'll try to work through the day. We were hoping that they'd be here this week, but they had anticipated asbestos abatement, so they just assumed another crew would do that, and they had always planned on starting that. So we're actually starting with them on Monday. The track and the stadium field are absolutely on schedule, so things are looking decent there. They've been on site every single day, fully staffed, working on those things. The supplies and the things they have are all great. There's a little bit of a snafu getting some communication with the engineers to hook into the town water system. but we've gotten past that and gotten approval, so we're really good. I'm sure today, as you saw, the demo of the front of the building has changed. That's gonna look absolutely fantastic, but it's gonna look a mess all summer long. That new ramp, the new stairs, that's all gonna be ADA compliant and updated. The new vestibule, the secure vestibule is gonna be happening. Lighting and ceiling tiles in the elementary school are way ahead of schedule, and there's a ton of electrical work being done on the sound system, the clocks, wireless, or wired access for the security system, et cetera. So some of the things are easy to see, some of the things are a little bit harder to see. I am probably gonna ask for a facilities meeting to make some decisions about facilities in the near future. Although the track is on schedule, I'm not sure the work on the other one is gonna be able to happen this year. So we're gonna have to make some decisions about when to start some of those things so that the things are cycling appropriately and there's appropriate space for the kids, right? So we always knew that there was gonna be a shortened amount of space while things were working, but if we don't do it in the right order, we'll find ourselves in a little bit of a pickle. So I just wanna make sure that the board is aware of that. Once I get that information from Shaker Flats, our construction manager, I've already spoken to them today, they will meet with us. So we'll probably have to do a little quick meeting prior to the next board meeting, but that's okay. We'll get that done. Does anybody have any questions about construction update?
Can we get only if it's like budget neutral, but any kind of like signage up, either like on the fence or something, so for community members who are just thinking about some of my recent interactions, like signs that they're like, this is what they're working on, and highlight,
Like
this is the field.
At the track?
Like, no, like people that are driving by and kind of seeing
Oh,
like
gotcha.
an
Okay.
image of what's coming and like secure entrance. I just wanna like make sure
Maybe I
people know.
can, maybe I can have Todd put an old bus in the parking lot, like almost as like a billboard kind of thing, and have a sign it.
Yeah,
We'll
just
work on that.
something.
So what might not start next year?
I don't wanna
No,
overestimate
no.
it, but some of the work on some of the other fields, when it was bid, they said they were gonna start the work concurrently, meaning
Okay.
working on the stadium field
Yeah.
and the Route 2 field.
Okay.
They're not starting the Route 2 field right
Okay.
yet, which is not catastrophic by any means, but that just throws the cycle off a little bit, so we just have to
Okay.
look at that.
What's the reasoning for not starting?
I don't know that there's a good one yet. I'm suspecting it's staffing, workers. That's my
Well, just
suspicion.
because if I'd like to see the contract, if it's in the contract that they were supposed to start that,
I don't
then
know if it was contract, I'll say
they
bid.
need to, they need to make good or
Yeah,
work around it.
let me make sure that that's still for sure the case, and then I can get back to you guys on that.
Thank you.
Was that, since that's a grass field, was that gonna be out for an extended period?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, anytime we did the grass field, and that was one of the considerations, and I'm looking at Kevin, because I remember you being at that meeting specifically. It was always going to be the case that a natural turf field had to have a certain amount of time, depending on if they top dressed it or bottom dressed it, which was just the style that they used to put new grass seed on there, how long it had to be offline. And there was always a consideration of minimally 1 year, if not up to 3 years. So that was my recollection of the conversation. Is that accurate?
Yes. I think it was 3 years for a full tear down.
And they weren't gonna do it.
No, they're not.
We weren't gonna do it full there.
It's just like drainage.
Yeah, they're gonna add new drainage, put new, material, natural materials, of course, on there, but depending on how the money ends up working out, it'll determine whether or not they can put turf or if they have to seed it. So even that in itself, is there mature grass going on it or something like that, but that was one of the considerations. Now, once the new stadium field is done, well, that's very playable year round. There's, you can have a lot of use on that. I don't know what is wrong with this one. Very, very playable year round. However, the natural grass would not be that way. That would not have that. Any other questions or feedback on the capital project? And I'll look at some signage. Academics, the AP scores are out. I just have not seen them yet. So once I have those, Mrs. Ralston, who runs our AP program, or Mrs. Norton, I should say, she is out on vacation this week. So once I get that, I have those things. And we're in the process of analyzing our Regents results. We actually had some kids do exceptionally well. A bunch of 100s, bunch of high 90s, actually, Mr. Chufan's son actually nailed the physics exam, so there definitely was some bright lights you could see in there. Some of our 8th grade students that were advanced actually did exceptionally well on some of their Regents exams as well, so hopefully I'll have Mrs. Lemieux at the next meeting. She's also on vacation today, just reporting back and sharing some of that Regents data with you. And also, to my knowledge, the K-8 scores are still not available yet, so.
The Regents data, I don't know if you saw the news in the, online about the earth science and some others. Were there any complaints from our students or teachers about the
I heard
exam?
from our teachers, and actually, Mr. Olson comes to mind if he's watching. They were sharing that the questions were out of, they thought the word was ridiculous. It was kind of out of the bounds of just some poorly worded questions. And so I heard some kids kind of anecdotally talking about it, but they questioned themselves, like, I don't think that we were supposed to learn that, and then they questioned themselves, but I did hear from some of the teachers. Some of the exams I thought were very fair, but that was a similar sentiment, so. We're working on Apex right now, which you approved in last year's budget, so some of the kids that struggled to pass, this is part of their credit recovery, and Sage Fogan, who's one of our counselors, is shepherding that project this year. She calls the kids, she gets them online, tries to motivate them, and that's really great. That helps a lot with our retention of students, because the more that students get behind in their credits, the chances of them graduating on time is much lower. So if we can keep them engaged, involved, and keep them with their cohort, they have a much better shot of doing that. Enrollment, as I mentioned before, pre-K is full. I mentioned about the kindergarten high needs. The other cohorts don't look very different. Again, kindergarten is going to be TBD. We won't know that until we get closer. And then I'm hoping that everybody had an opportunity to bring their calendars. I do want to schedule, in addition to the board meetings that you voted on tonight, we should schedule a summer board retreat, or at least a couple of those dates. If you can give me some dates to stay away from or not, I'll communicate with our attorney who will join and kind of go through some things at the board retreat as well. And I heard there was a request to go back to the Desmond. I don't know if that's still the case. We can make some calls there to see if that's available.
Hilton Garden Inn in Troy is very easy.
It's closer too.
So our next board meeting is, shoot, I forget that date, August.
14th.
August
14th.
Sorry, thank you. So is there any time between now and August 14th that a week that people might have an evening? It doesn't have to necessarily be a Thursday.
The week of the 28th. Is that work?
Yes,
Yeah,
that does
that
work
works
for me. That's the only week that would work for me. I was like,
July 28th?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just take a look here.
What's a good, when does the Desmond get this? That Monday?
Yeah.
Monday's good.
Monday.
I'll pick a
Do you,
date and
do you
I'll.
want to do Monday the 28th? All right, why don't we tentatively plan for Monday the 28th, and I'll just confirm with our attorney on that.
What time?
Do you want to do 6?
Yeah.
We'll do 6.
Couple hours.
And can you just, this is an,
Workshop, it's a board workshop.
okay.
Yep, the attorney will come, he'll talk about just things going on, just a little over what you can do, what you can't do, just procedures and things like that.
Okay.
Answering your questions.
Every year we kind of pick a different theme.
Yep, last year we talked a lot about communication.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, I can sense something out about what people might like to hear about what discuss.
okay.
And you said 6?
Yes. Okay, and I just want to welcome the 3 new board members. And you'll hear from me now that we have a new president. We'll wait for that, and then we have kind of separate meetings just to go over the things. You know, how you do this, how you access your emails, how you use Word docs, etc. So kind of like a little bit of a separate introduction. So I know this one's a little bit wonky, but it gets a little bit better as we go on. So that's it for me. Mrs. Honorado, do you have anything else that you'd like to add?
Not really. I mean, this is a big organizational time of year for me. So I won't bore you with all of the office tasks that we have going on, but certainly if you have any questions about what goes on in the summer, I'm happy to answer them. And the big things definitely will be covered in terms of just kind of enrollment trends and needs and staffing and things of that nature.
Okay, so that's it from me.
Committee and liaison updates. Anyone have any committee updates? I'll just say as PTSA liaison, they are looking for a new vice president. Their vice president stepped down. So if you know anyone who would be interested in that role, that is open right now.
I'm sorry, what's it?
Vice president for PTSA. Are you volunteering?
Nope.
Gotcha. All right, item 7.1, we need to approve this, so motion to put on the table. Evan, Tammy. Any discussion?
This is for our physics teacher. Anytime they're teaching a new class or something new to them, we offer some curriculum writing so that they can start off the year right, so.
All in favor? Approved. Angelina, the superintendent recommendations, approval, so motion to bring 8.1 through 8.16 to the table. Jenna, Dina.
Yeah, these are pretty standard. I do want to mention that our fall coaches are posted here as well. Many people are back again for many years, which we're very thankful for. I think that's good for our programs to have continuation in these programs. And our athletic director is an annual appointment, so Mr. Minor will continue on. The other things are pretty standard in here, just some reading, some leadership appointments, etc.
Any discussion on any of these items? All right, all in favor? Approved. All right, budget and finance, motion to put 9.1 through 9.8 on the table. Danielle, Kevin. Angelina, anything that you want to discuss?
I just want to bring to your attention, I know this was a commitment that the previous board had made to really make sure that everybody's taking a look at the items that should fall under financial reports. These are where you can see particulars having to do with budget transfers, having to do with expenses and expenditures. So you'll see here, these are the claims audit from April, May, and June, and I'll just show you what that actually looks like. It'll share, and Stephanie, if I say anything incorrectly, just please quote me. He'll notate any issues that if there was a irregularity or something that didn't go through the normal process or some way, you can note where that is, and that gives information to Stephanie too, so we can educate the person. And every month they look very much like this: what the date is, what the checks are, what the values are, and what the items are. And that's from Michael Wolf, who you are approving as the claims auditor. And again, as I mentioned in my news and notes, the claims auditor is an independent person that works for the board to make sure that processes are being followed appropriately. We are making sure we're getting the lowest bid, that we're getting the correct number of POs, that things are being processed. And as you know, when we have our annual audit, it's often very, very clean, and it's because this process is so tight.
So I had a question on this, but wasn't actually related to the report itself, but I think it was on that last one you brought up. Bus speeding fines, is this like a common occurrence?
So it actually is. I asked our claims auditor, he said he's seen that at most of his districts. It's Albany.
Yeah.
You know, the new ones that are put up in Albany? That are
The
like.
camera.
The cameras.
Oh, it's the cameras.
It's the
Yeah.
automated cameras.
Yeah, so it's actually those are our buses that went above 15, I think it is. Is it 15?
20.
It's really low now. It's all the schools in Albany, that's where we're getting them.
So I
Albany
assume
is
it's-
actually, that's in the Times Union, a report of the fines that are getting collected in the city of Albany.
I bet you your fines were for 32 miles an hour because every single person I've talked to, it's 32 miles an hour.
Oh, yeah, it's crazy. They're like barely.
I got two, one on one side of the intersection and one on the other side of the intersection. I didn't think that was legal to do, but apparently it is. Same ticket. They were like 54 seconds apart. If you were going slower, more. Fair point.
Does anybody have any questions on the claims audit? You'll see in the next month, as we close out the books for this previous year, you'll see many more in the months of August and September, just closing out those years, and that'll tell you about how much fund balance was used, et cetera.
That reminds me, 9.6, Stephanie, could you just talk through the capital reserve fund resolution?
Sure, so that's moving funds from our unemployment reserve, which we have not used in,
A long time.
overfunded. So this is moving 172,000 from that unemployment reserve to the capital reserve, and that will help us offset a possible tax increase for a future capital project.
How much is in the uninsured fund?
Unemployment?
Unemployment, sorry. And Danielle, I think that's the one we were discussing.
Yeah. I'll get it for you in a second. My
Okay.
computer now is just scrolling by itself.
Obviously not an issue with moving forward with this, but just curious what's in there. All right, so all in favor, items 9.1 through 9.8?
Can I just ask a question real quick? I'm sorry. The claims audit report for each month, right? Are we supposed to, like, fund ACHTA, like, are those things that we need to know, or like, what are those funds, and, do you know what I mean? Like,
I think I know what you mean.
is there like a crosswalk as to how to read this, or?
I can definitely get you a crosswalk as to how to read it. Do you, as a board member, need to know the specific fund codes? No. There are certain codes, like for grants, go into certain codes and things like that.
Yep.
I think I can definitely get you a cross, like a kind of like a cheat sheet on
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
But I would say like getting into the granular level, no. But I think to look for trends, like, hey, why do we keep spending money on repairing the whatever that might be?
Yeah.
That might cause you to think, does that make sense for us to do that?
Okay.
Why do we keep spending money on, if we have to bring in a particular consultant, does it make sense to do it that way? Those kind of things. So
Okay.
bigger picture.
I appreciate it.
Sure.
Thank you.
All right, any other discussion? All right, so all approved, so. All right. Public comment, do we have anyone?
Nothing is right
Jack?
No,
Something like.
good job, Ryan, I'll say
Yeah.
that.
Gotta review all the verbiage again. All right, so I
Motion to
need a
adjourn.
motion to adjourn. You guys can raise your hand too. Zach? John, all right. I think Janine thirded it. All right, so,
Yep.
all right, adjourned.